Hi, welcome to this Harlem Is Healing Dialogue. My name is Ron Scott. I'm a jazz journalist, and I also have a jazz column that I write for the Amsterdam News. Just a little bit about Harlem Is Healing Dialogue and what it's all about. Harlem Is Healing is a program of community works and New Heritage Theater Group. It began in 2020 to highlight contributions by 50 community members responding to the pandemic and its disproportionate impact on Harlem and communities of color. Over 2 years, that original impetus expanded to include responses to calls for social justice, to voting rights, to community policing, to the very meaning of democracy itself. In the end, we all find ourselves dealing with a need for community healing and seeking our community lessons learned. Our guest today is the fantastic Robin Bell Stevens, the Executive Director of Jazzmobile. And she's also actually the first woman to ever hold this position. So we may be able to get a little time to even discuss that. So Robin, good afternoon, it's good seeing you. Before we get into
good
all
afternoon.
of the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, good afternoon, Ron Scott. Always good to see you. And I was excited when they said that you'd be the one doing this interview. And in that spirit, I also want to thank certainly both the Rivers and Barbara Horowitz for inviting me today.
Most definitely. So before we get into the meat of the groovy groove, why don't you just give us a little background on yourself, because you didn't just stumble into this music we call jazz. You have a long history, probably going back to when you were a baby. So why don't
Right.
you just give us a little insight on that?
Sure. Yeah, well, I have the good fortune of having come from a family from music. I mean, going back to my grandmother from Muskogee, Oklahoma, who was a pianist and a vocalist. And she gave piano lessons, and she played in church. And she had 10 wonderful children, and one of whom was my dad, of course. And he became a bassist with Duke Ellington. So that was how I actually got introduced to the music. I can remember when I was a little girl, like a toddler, I can remember my mom would let my dad take me with him to rehearsals and to recording sessions. And as I got older, when he was playing in Duke Ellington's band, my older brother and sister, my mama, you notice I say my mom would allow, right? My mom would allow my father to take us on the road with him on the weekends sometimes and during the summer. So sadly for me, I couldn't sing well nor play an instrument well. My father once reminded me that, no, Rob, you really can't sing well, but don't ever let that keep you from singing, because singing makes you feel good. So I would just sing out loud off key every chance I got. And then as I got older, I realized that I really did love this music called jazz after having a career in fashion coordination and buying, and then also working in special events planning and management, and started producing jazz concerts and realized that that was where I belonged. So that's how I got into this industry, which I love.
And you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
We really appreciate you. So I'm going to start out asking you this question. How did the pandemic influence Jazzmobile, since live music was not an option at that time?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Fortunately for Jazzmobile, the pandemic did not negatively impact our ability to do what we do. It made us just reimagine how we do it. So in that sense, so when the pandemic hit, we were just in the final months of our residency at Minton's Playhouse. We had started like 9 months previous, and we were planning on doing it. We had started like in July, we're planning to do it through, I think, April. And then the pandemic hit. So the last one that we actually did was in March. And then my phone started ringing off the hook. People blowing up my phone, text messages, emails, our Facebook page. They were saying, so you got this pandemic. What about Summerfest? And then I was getting important calls from our donors. And I responded to everyone the same way. I will guarantee you that Jazzmobile Summerfest will not be canceled. I do not want my late father, I do not want Billy Taylor to come and haunt me and say, girl, have you lost your mind? You should have figured something out. So fortunately we did. And the shorthand version of it is that we were the only organization that the city allowed to go into the city parks. And they allowed us to record new programming. Right? The only caveat was it couldn't be amplified sound. Well, thanks to the wonderfulness of Bluetooth, we were able to do just that. And then with the support specifically of the New York City Department of Parks and Rec, the Central Park Conservancy, the Department of the Interior at Grant's Tomb, they manage that, National Park Services, and the wonderful people at Marcus Garvey Park specifically and Riverside Park specifically. They allowed us to come in there and we recorded roughly 4 acts at each location over a period of 2 weeks. So we were able to take our Jazzmobile Summerfest and we made it virtual. We created JZMTV, which you can still go to on YouTube and you can find a lot of the programs that we did. But the most ambitious concert that we did was certainly in partnership with the Central Park Conservancy. And hopefully a lot of your viewers are very much familiar with Great Jazz on the Great Hill that we do in August every year. And with the support of their president, a wonderful woman named Betsy Smith, and their entire team, including Erica Bloom, we were able to go in there and we presented George G. Big Band, Jeremy Pell, Allison Williams. And it was just an incredible afternoon of amazing music. And so what we created a brochure. We have a wonderful woman who's been working with us for years, and she's also a dear friend, very talented in so many areas, be it production, be it graphic design. And she created a brochure for us. And so we took the brochure we had for every concert that we did. You just click on the image of the artist and it took you to our YouTube channel. But what made it a little different for us, because we wanted people to, as best as possible, have that vibe of being at a concert with your friends, we decided to do it as a premiere. So you would go on Eventbrite and you would register. And then you were given the link and it was called your VIP pass to the TK Blue studio, to the Jeremy Pelt studio. And you would get there and they did, the countdown, and then we were in the chat. And when possible, we asked the artists to also tune in to come for the premiere of their performance. So they were chatting with the artists, they were chatting with me, they were chatting with their friends, and they were saying, girl, you got that wine we're not supposed to bring to the park, little jokes like that. So people really got a feeling as best they could from home that they were at a Jazzmobile concert. And it worked very, very well for us. And then also, since a lot of times in the parks, people would bring in their own food. Oh, there's a wonderful woman named Fauzia and her family. Those of you who've gone to Grant's Tomb on a Wednesday evening in July or August, she's there with a fish fry. And right, some great
serious fish fry.
Her family is amazing with what they provide for us. So we collaborated with some restaurants and we collaborated with Harlem Park to Park. And we did a dine-in. So we would also send links to different restaurants. And we would even say when we did our e-blast, hey, showtime is at 7 o'clock. Don't forget to order from this restaurant or that restaurant and go pick up your food. Because at that point, you couldn't dine in a restaurant. So you could order it, have it delivered, pick it up. And so we encourage people to support small businesses in Harlem. That was the other part of what we were doing through the pandemic, as well as providing a way for people. Because music is healing. Music will help you no, music can create a mood and a vibe for you. So if you're feeling kind of low, you put on, I'm going to stay in the jazz genre. So you put on a little Ellington swinging hard, just like, okay, I'm feeling better now, you know? So it's that kind of thing that Jazzmobile did. And I would dare say successfully during the pandemic. And the other agency I must mention is the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. So that was the thing that helped us. I was, you know, following, like everyone else, following and reading anything that's pandemic. And I saw something pop up that said, New York City is now allowing media production companies to get permits for TV and film. I picked up the phone and I said, hi, I'm Robin from Jazzmobile. I have JZM TV on YouTube. Do I qualify to get a permit? They paused and then they said, I guess you do. I said, thank you very much. And then that's when I called all the parks and called all the artists, and we were able to go into the parks to record. And I believe we were the only ones that were doing that.
Oh, that's exceptional the way you, yeah, because, you know, I mean, what you're doing and what Jazzmobile does is the same thing musicians do. It's all improvisation. You know, you know, they throw you a problem or whatever happens, like the pandemic. And as you said, you know, there's no option but to figure out how I could work around this. And that's what you did.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, we were blessed that we, you know, again, Billy Taylor, Daphne Arnsey, and Jimmy Heath, our founders and co-founders, you know, when they had this idea to create Jazzmobile, they knew what they were doing, and that's exactly what they did. There was a void, and the void was the people from our community that gave birth to, and specifically Harlem, that nurtured this great American classical music called jazz. They could go downtown, and of course they could put the tickets, you know, if it was a concert hall, it was the ticket price. If it was a club, it was the cover and then the minimum. So Billy and Daphne Arnsey said, let's create this thing called Jazzmobile. And Billy tells me that he reached out to Jimmy Heath as one of the first of the many great jazz artists that worked with us in the early days to come up with this idea. And I dare say, you know, here we are in the 21st century, and there's still a great need for what Jazzmobile does.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is Harlem is healing. Jazzmobile was actually founded on the premise of healing Harlem.
Exactly, Ron. Exactly. You said it precise. You said it better than I could. Absolutely.
You know, so thank you for that. So all you're actually doing, as it refers to healing Harlem, is you're just carrying on the mission that you started out with in the 60s.
Exactly, 1964, exactly.
So as we've been going through the pandemic, and it seems like it's getting better, but still people are calling me on the phone saying, oh man, I couldn't make that because I had COVID. What are your people saying to you as far as you being a healer or making their lives better through all of this, because we're still going through it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. And it's kind of like what you just said. I mean, people certainly did appreciate it when we took it to the virtual platform, but we didn't, the following year, well, other people are still saying, well, we're not sure if we're going to go back and do live yet, even outdoors. Jazzmobile, like said, I'm sorry, we're on our way. Mark your calendars. You know, that first Wednesday in July, after July 4th, we're going to be at Grant's Tomb, Friday at Marcus Garvey Park. And the pouring of love was almost overwhelming as people would come up. And again, you know, I had my mask, because I did still wear my mask, and we did encourage people to still wear their masks when they came into like Graham's Tomb, for example, in Marcus Garvey Park. And in the first year afterwards, in 2021 is when we first came back full force. And we had to actually come up with these pods. They weren't really strict about it, but we had to chalk off an area, for example, Grant's Tomb, like 6 feet apart. The exception was if you came with a group of people, y'all could all sit together. But otherwise, we'd like you to do the same. And people honor that. I was not surprised, but pleased that people did honor that. But all that to say, I had gotten on my shots. I had on 2 masks. I always had, like, you know, the funky little one, right? And then I have my styling one on top, leopard print, or
Right.
I had one from Stanley Crouch that said "Victory is assured." I
Oh,
had that one on the
yeah.
top of it. Yes, right. I had to get my boy Stanley in this. But any event, so with all of that, we were able to do what we wanted to do. But the thing that I found, and again, fortunately, it didn't have a negative effect. People would come up to me and hug me like I was a long lost cousin, sister. They were just so glad. Oh my God, so glad to see you. I know Jazzmobile is back when I see you. I can't. And then they start telling me their stories of isolation, their stories of missing live music, and the impact. And then not more than once, on several occasions, people said to me, you know what? Other organizations are now starting to do outdoor programming, free programming. And they said they're acting like this is something new, like this is a new idea they came up with. And I would smile and say, yeah, I was on a couple of Zoom calls and I heard people talking that way too. My only response was, I'm just so glad that other people are doing what we've been doing at that point for 56, 57 years, because it's a model that works. It's a model, like I keep saying, that Billy Taylor, Daphne Arnstein, and Jimmy Heath came up with. And as long as there are people that are in what we call underserved communities, as long as there are people who are doing okay, they have a good job, but the cash flow won't allow them to go spend that $100, right? Exactly, be it in a concert hall or for, a show and a cover. They know that they can count on Jazzmobile. They know they're going to get the world-class artist, be it a Wycliffe Gordon, be it I'm going to actually, because you've been around for so long, I'm going to throw in names, from our history, be it a Duke Ellington, be it a Wynton Marsalis, a Branford Marsalis, be it a Camille Thurman, be it a, Irene Reed. I just have to say her name.
Irene
I
Reed. I
know.
love her. From
My
the
God.
Bronx. From the Bronx.
On the Bronx,
Oh
down
man, Irene Reed. Wow.
right? She was incredible. So I got a little
Yeah.
news story. Some years ago, let me be more direct. Many years ago, I was working with the Jackie Robinson Foundation as doing their public relations and executive producer of their annual jazz concert called An Afternoon of Jazz. And it was held, as some of you viewers will know, in Stamford, Connecticut at 35 Cascade Road at the home of Jackie and Rachel Robinson. By the time I started working on it, Jackie had since passed away, but the family decided to do it as a fundraiser, having started as a fundraiser when Jackie was alive, for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Council.
Right.
Then over the years, there were different charities. And after Jackie passed away, they started doing it for the Jackie Robinson Foundation. And it was after that point when I joined as executive producer, working with the phenomenal Billy Taylor, who used to tell people he knew me before I was born, because my dad used to play in his before he played with Duke. But any event, so we started Rachel's house in Connecticut, and we didn't have a place to do it. So it was then that I was charged, along with a guy named Jerry Lewis, a different Jerry Lewis, who was then president of the Jackie Robinson Foundation. We had to find a new location. So long story short, I heard about this company that was doing a fam trip to Dakar, Senegal.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Right, and
I
they
didn't go, but I remember.
right. So anyway, they came to me and said, "Hey, do you think the Jackie Robinson Foundation could put together a group of 40 people?" And I said, "Let me think about it." So I said, "Jerry, I got an idea. Forget this 40 people stuff. Why don't we get our own travel agent? And why don't we take a group? And since Rachel sold the house, we don't have any place to do it next year, why don't we take it to Dakar, Senegal?" Jerry was able to get a corporate sponsor, and we got some other smaller sponsors. So it ended up being a 9-day festival in Dakar, Senegal. On a Tuesday, we took about 300 people, and then the following Thursday, we brought over another, I guess must have been if it was 300, probably another 200 people, because we were about 500 people. And we took about 24 musicians. And we had a 9-day festival that included obviously jazz, music, concerts. We had in the Daniel Serrano National Theater. We went into different clubs throughout Dakar. But the female vocalist headliner was Miss Irene Reed.
All right,
And
Irene Reed.
I had to get right. I had to give that backdrop. But the fun thing was, we were very clear. We only had 500 people that we brought with us, but then there were 1,100 seats. So they said, "Oh, well, we'd like to give those tickets, to our government officials." And this, I said, "Okay, fine." So if we've got, I think we must have had obviously like 600 tickets. I said, we'll give you 200. But the other 400 have to go to the people from the community.
People, that's right.
Right, they have to go to the people. And to the credit of Rachel Robinson, who was, of course, chairman of the board at that time, and Jerry Lewis, president, they said, and we want to leave some money behind. So one of the things that Jerry and I were charged with was identifying students, and we left them with the scholarship. So at that time, Dakar, Senegal, the school you wanted to go to, you want to get your kids in a parochial school, and they were Catholic schools, but there was a tuition. I think we had tuition, left money to pay for 12 students. They were at different levels in different grades, but the youngest one and everyone above them were able to make it straight through high school with the scholarship that was left behind as a result of that event. But with the people in the audience, let me get back to Irene, with the people that were in the audience, when they heard Irene, first, if those of the audience don't know what Irene's physical appearance is, she was absolutely stunning. And she wore and styling and always styling.
Always styling.
Right? So she walked out onto that stage. And the moment she had on some African garb. So she had, gone into the local marketplace and got an outfit. When she opened up her mouth, the audience went crazy. It was, but I looked over in the corner where the VIPs were, they were like, but the other people that we gave from the community, they were just like having the best time of their lives. And then when Joe Newman came out and did his trumpet solo with Irene Reed, I'm getting excited. I'm getting off point. But anyway, but when the moment for me was when Irene came off stage and we were talking afterwards, she gave me the biggest hug and said, "Robin, thank you so much for not only inviting me to the motherland for this opportunity, but for me to get this kind of response." You said, people appreciate what I do, but not like this. So for me, that's like one of my highlights of my career, if you will. And I have others like that, where we give opportunity to jazz artists to present them in a way where they are, what they like to say, my people really appreciate me. So that definitely was an amazing opportunity for me in terms of my career.
Well, like I said, you've done some outstanding things and continue to do. But I wanted to ask you this, because I think I actually had mentioned it a few weeks ago. You formed quite a few partnerships during this whole pandemic and all of the social issues, voting rights and policing in our community. But you have a partnership where I think it's every Wednesday from 12 noon to 12:25, you have those live shows.
Yes, so actually,
I want you to just talk about that, because not only is it a form of healing, but it also gives our seniors in the community an opportunity to come out during the daytime so that they don't have to worry about being out at night.
Exactly. And I thank you for bringing that up as well, because that is actually the work of the Interchurch Center. And Paula Mayo, who is the president and CEO of the Interchurch Center, she came up working with their music director. They came up with this Wednesdays afternoons of music. They reached out to Jazzmobile to ask us if we would like to be a part of. So we're really there as a marketing partner, as opposed to a producing partner. But just for the reasons that you gave, because of all the work that we also do with seniors, throughout the year, we also work with senior centers in Harlem and in the Bronx specifically, where we bring daytime programming. But this, as you just said, is an opportunity for them to come to a theater setting, if you will, and I got allergies. He has some great music. And then, so they do, I always like to remind people, because sometimes, the artists that are performing are not necessarily from the American classical music genre, but from the European classical genre of music. And they may have a chamber group, but they may have a soloist, they may have a choir. And I always like to remind people, much like Duke Ellington didn't say jazz is my mistress when he decided to write his autobiography, he wrote music is my mistress. And if you look at the Jazzmobile tagline, it says we keep the music playing. So, because for us, it's always about the music. Yes, certainly we do lead with jazz because that's who we are and always will be. But at the same time, we respect the other types of music because we believe that at the root of all music is, especially if it's from this part of the globe, is always rooted in blues and jazz. You can't really separate us out of it. If you take a look at it, you'll look closer, you'll see that, oh yeah, we're up in there too, no matter what the music is, And there are a number of jazz artists, well, let me just stick with your question. But the other thing is in terms of the healing, you're absolutely right, because the seniors have actually said something to me, that especially now, because we also are doing a residency now at the Interchurch Center. And every second Wednesday in the evening from 7 to 8:30, we are there in the chapel, bringing, again, different performances in there, again, for a 90-minute set. But we find that some of our seniors, because it's getting dark earlier, because we're there, year round now. We start in September and we go through June. So some of those winter months, it's getting dark earlier, like, what time is it now? We find, right? we find that our seniors, as you just said, are uncomfortable coming out at night. And we certainly do respect and understand that. But they also have said to me, I'm so glad that you're offering something else to the seniors who follow you, to the seniors who come, out to see you in the summertime, that you're offering something else for us to do during the week, in the afternoon. And then, as you say, it's from 12:05 to 12:35, but then downstairs is the Riverside Cafe, where it's a restaurant, right? So they can come there and they can have their lunch, and there's an escalator to take you down, the escalator to take you up. You don't have to worry about, managing stairs. And the food is good and the price is reasonable, for outside dining. And if you, come with your friends, you can make a nice afternoon of it. And again, it's always all about the healing. And you mentioned, we were very much involved in doing Get Out the Vote over the past 4 years, and sending reminders. We even had to play, click here to register, click here if you want to vote early, because a lot of people don't realize that Jazzmobile came out of social justice. We were founded, right? We were founded, as you all know, Dr. Billy Taylor, and some of your viewers may know that Billy Taylor wrote a song called "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free," right?
No question.
And right, exactly. And that song he actually wrote, I believe, in the 50s. But he and Dr. King were friends. And so whenever Billy would show up at a rally or a meeting, and Dr. King would see him there, and he'd say, "Hey, Billy, play that jazzy gospel tune for me. You know the one." And he would play "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free." And Dr. King declared that one of the civil rights anthems. And as we look at it today, how other more contemporary artists have used it, be it a John Legend and a Questlove, when they did that social justice album, now probably maybe 8 or 9 years ago, if not 10 years ago. If you hear Letticy, her version of it, and who can ever forget the version that really made the top charts and put it on the charts, was the work of the Empress Nina Simone, her version of "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free." Right.
That's
and then on
killer.
the commercial side, right? And on the commercial side, Coca-Cola one year for Super Bowl, they used that. They did a commercial with that song. Although he wrote the song, his muse for writing that song was his daughter, Kim Taylor Thompson. And, I'm not going to try and tell the story because I can't tell it as well as Kim nor Billy. But basically, she came home from school one day, and he realized that, I need to give her a little something, a little quick music lesson. And so that's how the first notes of it, the first rhythm of it came out. And then it became the song that we know, "I Wish I Knew How It Feel to Be Free." But maybe one day I'll get Kim to record that story.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I just want, because we're coming close to the end of this incredible journey, but just to put this in perspective with musicians, because as I mentioned before, Jazzmobile is all about the musicians and all about the community of Harlem, which has extended around the world because of the great music. But because of the times that we're in right now, you're doing what you do, but a lot of musicians like Craig Harris, he did that beautiful piece called Breathe. You know, we have Antoinette Montague that sings in that vein. Cynthia Scott during the pandemic, she called me up because she had wrote a song that she wanted to get out there that she actually sang the last time she did Jazzmobile. So, so there's a lot of musicians that are out there that are feeling the same thing you're feeling as the director of Jazzmobile. And I'm sure, like I mentioned those names, when they perform at Jazzmobile, they're sharing these songs, which is actually for them singing a song and writing a song is actually helping them heal. So we're all healing at the same time when we're at Jazzmobile, including all the beautiful people that come out to see the shows and performances.
Yeah, no, thank you again, Ron. You're absolutely correct, and that's why people as I've been here at Jazzmobile going on, I think it's 19 years now. It's going to be 20 soon. I think maybe next year
Already?
I know,
like
that's
just
what I said. I know, that's what I said. How could I been here that long? But seriously, people have even said to me, hey, you ever think about retiring? And I just said, well, here's my position on retiring. I consider myself fortunate to have found my place in this space, the American classical music called jazz, where being a person who has had a long history of experience in this music, there will always be space for someone who can bring that history and that experience to this music. I take a look at, I said, I have two models, actually three models in terms of retirement in jazz. And I decided that I'm going to retire the same way jazz artists retire. Oh, they don't retire. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's the right.
That's right.
In some form or another. They are always playing the music, even if they're no longer on the bandstand touring, every summer, every weekend. They are perhaps teaching it. They're perhaps having private lessons. They're perhaps doing special performances. They're perhaps saying yes when Robin calls them. Then I say, thank you so much for coming out of retirement for me. And they laugh. But the point is that this music has a space for, if you are a 14-year-old Terry Lynn Carrington, who I first presented at the Jackie Robinson Jazz Concert at Rachel's house in Connecticut, or a Christian Sands, who at 14 or younger even, was a protege of a Billy Taylor, who I got to present at Gracie Mansion when we did our 45th birthday party there. Or if you are a young Solomon Hicks, who came out of our Saturday Jazz Workshop program, as did a TK Blue and others. And all of these artists that I'm mentioning, they still support Jazzmobile in one way or another. And then you've got, your Barry Harris's, who one of his last public appearances was on the Jazzmobile stage. And I'm so grateful we have a recording of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but when I remember talking to Billy Taylor, probably about 10 years before he passed, and he said, yeah, I retired. And I said, oh, really? And he started laughing. He said, let me tell you what that means to some of us jazz musicians. When we say we retire, we tell people that then when the promoters and the festival producers, they want to book us, our price goes up because you asked me to come out of retirement to do your festival. But then I have to say, one of my other mentors is, and that I look to a lot over the years, and when he passed away, I will say, just like the passing of my dad, passing of, Billy Taylor, also mentors of mine and others, George T. Simon. But when George Wein passed away, I'll never forget the first time I did the Jackie Robinson Jazz Concert. I called him up and I called Joyce up, and they said, got to come by the house. And so I went to the apartment and I sat there. I figured I'd be there for, 45 minutes, if I'm lucky, an hour. Almost 4 hours later, I walked out, and the knowledge he bestowed on me. And when I left, he said, basically, I'm going to paraphrase, he said, my door is always open. You call me anytime. And that, again, so that was when I did Jackie Robinson Jazz Concert. That was decades ago. And he was a man of his word. He was a man of his word every time I called on him. So now when I think about retirement, I said, okay, I'm good. I'm going to do the same thing George Wein did. I think George Wein was 92 when he announced his retirement, and it was a few years later that he left the planet. So yeah, that's my plan. I'm going to retire about 92. That seems like a good age.
Okay, so that's the way I feel. I feel similar to the musicians too. It's like, I love doing what I do, so why stop? So
Right.
since there's no limit on your retirement, where do you see Jazzmobile going in the next 5 years, considering that we may still be in all this social upheaval and the voting rights, so hopefully the voting rights and all of that will work out. But if it doesn't, where do you see Jazzmobile going? I mean, you've done a great job so far.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Well, I've always said, when I first got here, I would tell people, be they the audience members, be they musicians, be they potential donors or donors, I always say that Jazzmobile was founded by the people, of the people, and for the people. And that will always be our underlying theme, if you will. Our mission of 1964 was and still is to present, preserve, promote, and propagate America's classical music. And that's our mission statement, pure and simple. So we will continue to do that. What we do is we take a look at each P, rather intentionally or unintentionally, and we see how are we doing it now? How can we do it differently? How can we maintain what we've been doing successfully? And how can we take that and help bring it to a wider audience? Be they, because we're in the schools, we have a Saturday Jazz Workshop program. We have a Lecture Dem program. The Lecture Dem program started out being for students in the schools. And again, I dare say we started that in the 1960s. The Lecture and the Saturday Jazz Workshops. Again, we started that in the late 60s, early 70s. So we will continue to do that. We have reimagined some of those programmings. We now do a Lecture Dem program in senior citizens centers. We actually, as it implies, we go to the centers and we bring program. We create field trips for them, because a lot of our seniors, again, daytime, Ron, where a lot of them, because they're on fixed incomes and they depend on the wonderful meals that they do get in these centers, but they rarely go to a restaurant that's not a fast food restaurant. So a couple of years ago, we collaborated with a Harlem-based restaurant, and we did I think it was maybe on a Wednesday. So we did a Wednesday jazz brunch. And so they came in, they had a wonderful meal, and they had, I think Bill Saxton and his group came and played. Right, yeah, and he kills it every time. And so those are the other kinds of things that we're looking on that level. And on a larger scale, as we continue to collaborate with organizations like the Central Park Conservancy, like the City Parks Foundation, like Harlem Week, like the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, like New Heritage Theater, like the Harlem Arts Alliance, and others, I dare say, in other boroughs, we are looking at ways that we can bring programming that is not only really in our lane jazz, but also is a way that we can expand upon that theme, if you will. Because we've done it in the past. One example is with support from the Grammy Foundation. We did a seminar at the Schomburg Center, again, one of our collaborators, and it was called Is Jazz Influencing Hip Hop? Is Hip Hop Influencing Jazz? And that was around the time that Branford Marsalis had come out with that CD, Jazzmatazz, I think it was called. And we had, on the panel, we had Sheila Anderson, we had Jimmy Heath, we had Mtume Heath, we had the other James Brown, who was actually the moderator. And we had, I think, George Lewis, I think that's his name. He is a hip hop historian. and Kevin, I want to say, I'm blocking Kevin's last name, but I don't want to misspeak. But, and in that room, we had 14 and 15-year-olds. And I think at that time, at almost 80 years old, Jimmy Heath was the oldest person in the room. And we talked about hip hop. We talked about it from the music perspective and from, again, the social perspective. And it was interesting to hear the differences of opinion that started out at this level in terms of volume and expressing the difference of opinion and defending, you know, what was called, I guess still is called, gangster rap. And then, but we, as the conversation worked, we gave a space for everyone to speak their opinion respectfully. At the end, it was one of the statements that stuck with me. Jimmy Heath said, you know, I love that they are streaming my music, you know, on their albums, on their CDs, in their concerts. But for me, I would really prefer that they would learn how to play this music. And then with that, he got this standing ovation, even from the youngsters in the room, because they understood that, you know, again, it's great. Like he said, I'm making money off the streaming, and Mtume obviously was contributing to that part of the conversation as well. But the important thing is that keep the music playing, find ways where you can come together and collaborate. And as you talk about what's next for Jazzmobile, we are planning to move into a new venue. Thanks to the wonderful, you're right, we're moving, actually, we're going to have 2 spaces. At the Victoria Theater space, we were going to have our office space there, but we moved to a different location. But we are going to be moving to a different location, but we maintained our residency. So we'll be doing a performance residency at the Victoria, because there'll be 2 performance spaces there. So we'll be one of the art and cultures in residence. But our offices will be about half a block away at the National Urban League Empowerment Center. I think it's called the Urban League Empowerment Center. And along with 100 Black Men, and there'll be, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2 other not-for-profit organizations that are going in there, but thanks to the wisdom and support of Inez Dickens. She was the first one to bring Jazzmobile to them, and Mark Morial definitely was 100% supportive of the idea, as was 100 Black Men and other elected officials at the state level that were required to make it possible for Jazzmobile to have space in there, free space in perpetuity. So we are very grateful that we're going to be able to have a new home. But even within that, we're looking at, as we continue to grow in that regard, other ways that we are going to expand. And certainly I would say 5 years from now, you'll be seeing a lot more things that Jazzmobile is doing that you never knew we were even thinking about.
All right, thank you. And with that, my dear viewers, we're going to say good afternoon, good evening, and thank the wonderful Miss Robin Bell Stevens, Executive Director of Jazzmobile, for being our guest today. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you, Ron. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.